Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balcerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To learn more about our AI powered data security platform, please visit centra.io. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Data. My guest today is over 30 years in the IT and security industry, currently the director of Cybersecurity Architecture at Amtrak. Arturo Santos, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ward. Very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here, sir. You ready to jump in?
I am. Let's do it.
Perfect. In your professional opinion, what's the biggest challenge organizations are facing when it comes to data security?
So I will answer that question with two stories that happened yesterday. Actually, very recent events. One is that the first one is I received a letter from a company that I worked for over 20 years ago, and it was one of those letters. You might have seen one of those that starts saying, "Our HR records have been compromised, and we believe that your data is now somewhere in the dark web." Blah 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 blah. We're trying to fix the problem, and we're working on it, and we give you a free monitoring service for a year, something like that, which is pretty useless now. But if you think about it, there are many things wrong with this. First off, this is the company that I worked for 20 years ago. So why do they even have my records still on production databases or anywhere? And I'm talking about a huge organization. So this is a company, I don't want to name names, but this is a company that probably affected thousands of, if not tens of thousands of people over the last 20 years that have worked for this company. So it's a huge organization. So it's a big impact. I started working in cybersecurity because I am passionate about protecting my data. I see it as a consumer right. Like when I go to a bank, when I work for an employee, when I go to a medical center, and I offer my information, my private information, for them to, for me to make a transaction, for to work on my health or whatever the case, I am offering, again, my private information. And organizations should get into the mindset of, this information is not mine. I'm borrowing from this person for this purpose. And, keep it, again, keep the ownership of the information to who it belongs, and protect it as it should. So that's one thing that is, like I said, the fact that like I said, that I'm pretty sure that you and many of your listeners have received these letters. It's concerning. It is not normal, and it's not acceptable. It's not the right thing. Like I said, there are so many problems with this type of situation.
For multiple reasons, right? Like, man. So I have received those letters, and I'm sure listeners have as well. Unfortunately, it's become normal, right, for us to get those things, and it's almost a joke. Not a ha-ha joke, but oh my goodness, here we go. Every time I get one, it's like, oh boy, who now, right? Who now? Not compromised. But 20 years later, I would be very angry if I received those from an employer 20 years past. So many things are wrong with that. That is unreal. So that kind of goes back to data retention.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of governance issues there to begin with, right? To your point, 20 years later, why is my data still available within the databases in this organization? Why is not protected? And more. That really shows a lack of governance, lack of policies about data retention, and a lack of protection.
Yeah, and I've seen there's been a few organizations that I've worked with in the past as a data security leader. And when I've gone in, I've talked to them, "Hey, what's your sensitive data?" And, I usually get the, "Our customer data is pretty important." Cool, right? Agreed. Gold star. Customer data is very important. But a few organizations I've worked with, and it kind of goes to your story here, um, I would pivot and say, "What about employee data?" And there was often a pause. Those organizations, at least initially, did not consider those equal, which blew my mind. Like, seriously? Like, yes, your brand, your reputation, that's generally your customers. But my, oh my, you've got the same data on your employees, not more.
Well, when we think about it, what happens, for instance, with your social media, for instance, or when you do something in social media and you offer some information there, not only your data is not protected at the level it should be, your data is now, and the end user agreements, some of them do disclose, hey, by you providing this information to us, you acknowledge that now we have control over that, and now we can sell it and distribute it and give it away or do whatever you want. How many people actually read the fine print? Again, that one there is a fine print, but
Right.
uh, and so uh, it's the first part of your answer, of the answer to your question. I mean, this is what worries me today a lot. This kind of normal, which is not normal, that we live in, our data privacy.
So you said there was two. What's the second part?
Oh, so the second one is so we are recording this on January the 20th. If you read the news yesterday, I don't know if you did, there was a train derailment in Spain. Actually, not only after the derailment, there was a crash. And that those kind of incidents are really what keep me up at night these days, even more so than the data privacy concerns that I have, because they involve lives. And so I work in the rail industry right now, so this is very close in my heart. And I also work with protecting the critical infrastructure, like what trains are. Uh, so what happens is that we are transitioning from from legacy or uh, OT technology um, to very sophisticated cyber physical systems that are interconnected, that generate and provide a lot more uh, records and data that we used to have 10, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. Now we are processing terabytes of data on a daily basis to assess the status of critical infrastructure. I can go into a little more details of the trains if I'm allowed. For instance, we now when you run a train, the operators are measuring, for instance, the conditions of the railroads, from temperature to potential damages and things like that, because they affect the way the train can behave. Speeds are conditioned by the environment. Can only go so fast, or you need to prepare to brake depending upon, for instance, how hot the railroads are. So it's very sophisticated things. There is something that is called really a series of systems and trains that are PTC, uh, which stands for preventing train control, that take over. Think about like the cruise control for your car, but they can actually take over management of the train when they foresee that there's a hazard coming out, and we need to reduce speed, and the conductor is not doing it. This system can override the functionality of train, and they say, okay, it's time to start braking. Stopping a train is not like stopping a car that you can just hit the brakes. You really need to prepare miles in advance for doing that. So, like I said, we're moving from technology that was made up of these sensors that were pretty legacy that you had in the sprint in many different places, but you couldn't do. They were not transmitting data anywhere. You actually had to go there and read it, or maybe go to a central station. Now all that information is a lot more, first off, that we're collecting, and it's all going to the cloud. So now imagine those. Not only is it going to the cloud, it's going back to the operational environment as well. Because the same is true for almost all critical infrastructure. And I'm using trains here, but that happens with nuclear plants. That happens with airplanes and all that. I mean, it's information going both ways to take action on the environmental conditions of the infrastructure, that whatever that happens to be. So just think about this. Think about for a second what happens if that gets controlled by the wrong hands. Somebody takes over the brakes of the train first. Which, by the way, I mean, it's too early to tell, and I hope that's not the case in Spain. But there's going to be a long investigation. But we cannot rule out that this was not a cyber attack yet. Hopefully, but what keeps me up at night is how vulnerable this critical infrastructure is in us everywhere.
Agreed. And it's interesting. I've talked to a few organizations that have not only their IT, corporate systems, your traditional ones for an organization, right? But they also have OT, right? OT is similar to what you're describing. And I've seen for many years, I continue to see it. There's a lot of folks that they do decent with corporate, right? They have all the applicable controls. They think about all the various things. I mean, we all struggle with it, right? But then I look at how they approach their OT environments, and it's very different. Oftentimes, at least recently, folks I've talked to haven't even considered data security implications when it comes to their OT environment. Just, oh, it's cordoned off, it's its own network, they only talk to each other. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So I'm curious, Arturo, like this has been your space for quite a while. It's obviously your space today. How do we solve? How do the organizations that have OT environments start to solve for data security and those types of things?
As you reminded everyone, I'm an architect, so I see this from the architectural perspective. And there is a reference architecture for OT, for building secure OT networks. It's called the Purdue model, which basically isolates the OT environments and manages the IT OT connectivity or traffic through a series of controls on that and shared services on that DMZ portion of the network. So that's true from the architectural perspective, and let's say that's the reference architecture that we have to do. So there are a few rules there. So number one, you have to have different network. Really, your IT and your OT are two different things, and they should be isolated with very limited communications exchange, just whatever is necessary, and to the point of what's necessary. Number one. Number two, you really have to enforce your trust principles and access controls and identity management requirements that true for both IT and OT. And you could do that in the OT environment as well. And what's happening too is there are, because of the changes, this dramatic change that we're going through on the OT side, like I said, moving from legacy system to very sophisticated cyber physical devices, is that there's also a lot of regulation and discussion and conversation about how do we secure our uh, our networks. I can tell you, for instance, I'm working on the rail industry. We're developing the first international cybersecurity standard for rail applications. It's a long name, but it's yeah, it is exciting. And people that know the OT environment and know about the standards, there is a Bible for that, which is the IEC PT 62443. That's the standard for OT cybersecurity. So, well, the new international standard that we're putting together, it's basically the implementation on that specifically for the rail industry. This is a project that is about 5 years old. We've been working on it for a while. I represent the North American delegation of people that are working, putting these ideas together. So that's something that is exciting, that is coming. Developing the standard is only, it's only one component of the solution. It's one piece in the puzzle, but it's an important one because that will help regulation. That will help coordinate the entire supply chain because vendors will have to comply with these standards. Providers will have to, service providers, you have to comply with these standards. And, there's no such thing as an organization in a vacuum anymore. And especially with the critical infrastructure. I mean, it's critical infrastructure, any piece of that that you look at, it's one piece on a supply chain. Right? So without trains, we're not able to move people in the same way. We're not able to deliver goods in the same way. We are not, and at the same time, we also depend on energy, for instance. We also depend on communications, for instance. So all of these critical infrastructure components are part of a supply chain, and we're all linked together.
Well, and going back to your statement about standards, standards are super helpful. Certainly if there are industry standards that folks can, leverage, and instead of, like we said, we're not in a vacuum anymore, right? There's plenty of organizations out there that at least initially kind of start sprinting off on their own. Hey, we've got this super unique problem. We have to go solve for it. And I argue, yeah, you might be unique, but you're probably not super unique, right? There's probably a lot of parallels between your organization and, organization B over here. Solve those problems together. So I really love that when you were talking with me the other day, how you told me that you are part of that delegation, right? For North America for railways. That's super exciting. So bringing it back to data security, is there anything that you guys are doing with regard to data within that delegation?
Well, yeah, and let me elaborate a little bit more on that concept. Like I said, we are a supply chain, and I give you a good and actually use case and something that we've done and Amtrak, and involves AI, which is exciting. So the concept is this: when it comes to threat intelligence and incidents response, this is not something that just one organization can do by themselves anymore. We don't have enough, we just don't have enough data and especially processing power to assess all the potential indicators of compromise and indicators of attack that could lead to potential risks for Amtrak based on events that are happening anywhere in the world. So if you see when let's say you see a pattern of incidents in the rail industry, or you identify a vulnerability on an OT system that is commonly used not only in the rail industry, but across a lot of the OT environments. So you have to be aware of those, because if you don't fix those things real quick, they are attack vectors. Before you know it, you can be compromised. So even thought, I mean, we're not in the business of manufacturing OT devices. We need to be fully aware of zero-day exploits to those and act upon them right away, patch them as soon as possible. We need to be aware of, we're not in the airline industry. But if something happens to airlines and they happens the same, they happen to be using the same kind of devices, we need to be aware of those and we need to act upon with a quick. If there are, let's say, attacks to the transportation industry that are coordinated by bad actors in different places at the same time, we should be aware of those before they happen to us and start acting accordingly. And the same is true for, all the critical infrastructure organizations within the supply chain. So in order to do that, what we have done is we have, this is really a service that we hired for threat intelligence nexus, which basically, these are organizations that are compiling information from many, many, many different sources, from governmental agencies, from the ABI, the CIA, the TSA, as well as independent providers, other operators, airports, airlines, organizations all over the world, the ISACs, which are those independent security aggregators. All of these organizations are feeding these systems with thousands of records of terabytes of real-time data. Well, good to know that. That's when AI comes into place. Without AI, you wouldn't be able to process that, to qualify that information, to put it into context and understand, okay, is this a real threat or not? And should we act on it? Yes and no, right? So in addition to the context information, which is basically what, contextualizing of the data, which is what the first piece of AI does. This is typical Gen AI, putting all this together and contextualizing this. We could also leverage some agentic AI, which is in the automation of incident response process. Basically saying, okay, now that we have this and we need to really respond to this incident as soon as possible, that's where agentic AI comes into place and can develop business rules and security protocols to act on this. So for that part, you have to develop some orchestration with your incident response management systems and your entire OT network will need to act upon this information that is now reliable. It's up to date, and it is being prioritized. And so we really know that there is there.
I love it. Great use cases of AI that you just laid out there. And I was kind of reminiscing my head a bit as you were going through that. I mean, I've been in security myself over 20 years at this point. I remember one of the first projects I ever did was putting a SIM in place, right? Basically a log aggregator back in the day. It was all it was, right? Collecting all the logs. So as you were going through that, kind of laying out all the intel y'all are gathering, I was sitting there like, man, we were trying to solve for this 20 plus years ago, right? Didn't have near the amount of data that I'm sure you guys produce daily and many other organizations as well. Fast forward to today, um, you know, gigabytes, terabytes of data coming in. There's a big data problem for sure with that. AI, great way to solve for it. Something that you said I wanna really highlight because this was brought up in a conversation I had, I think it was last week. Accuracy of the data, super important. Because AI is great, right? AI is doing some really fantastic things, but it goes back to if the data's garbage, you're probably gonna get garbage out. So, kinda going back to you, what are you doing? What tips might you have around ensuring that that data is actually actionable and, up to date, so you can do those good things with the AI solution to the back end?
Yeah, so there's a lot of that's where the AI piece is very important, and it's similar to what you used to do with your scene technology. But by the way, AI is not a new concept. There's a lot of hype and things that are happening right now, but we've been using the AI for 20 years or even longer. What's different now is that we have on generative AI and agentic AI, so very different components. And by the way, just a little commercial on this. Like I said, there's a lot of hype on this, but there's a bigger, in my opinion, a bigger historical uh, things happening right now. If you think about AI at the discovery of the wheel, quantum computing is about the engines where you'll be able to move those wheels. So there's and quantum computing is happening right now because AI is a lot of resource, very resource intensive. So we need things like quantum computing to really enable the power of AI. Anyway, that was my conversion. Uh, because I mean, I know that, like I said, there's a lot of hype about AI, but in my opinion, there are even more important elements right now. Like quantum computing is really more critical for what's going to happen. But you're right. I mean, so AI comes into place for this, like, this analysis, contextualizing of this. Think about it. The first thing that you have to do when you have these amounts of data is reformat it real quick, so that you can make sense out of that. That's step one. Step two is really assess what you do with a SIM tool. Where you have, do we have one incident recording about this, or we have 1,000 incidents recorded about this? Because if it's one isolated issue, well, maybe just a probe, maybe just a little device somewhere that happened to malfunction should react on it. Maybe not, right? But when you see thousands of related incidents about the same type of device, for instance, or about the same indicator of attack in many different places, that will give you a sense of priority. Now, the other piece of that is, does that affect my industry? Does that affect my organization right away? And how so? And with that criteria, that's when AI say, hey, red flag, you need to act on this right now. But you could also have yellow flags like, hey, here's a problem. It's not critical right now, but you need to put it on the radar. And and then the rest of things, the garbage and the noise that probably 90% of what you get, which is a challenge, right? Because we're getting terabytes of data, and 90% of that is not relevant. Probably important, but not relevant for what you need to, if you have to automate an incident response. That's what's going on. That's where we are working on right now. These AI models, still refinement, for sure. Like anything, you still have biases, but it's a good tool that we have now. AI definitely helps. And yeah.
It's exciting times that we live in for sure. Where technology has kind of come from, and I've been very fortunate to be in the industry as long as I have, and kind of looking at where it's going. I want to go back. You mentioned quantum computing. I think that's so. First off, I'm with you. I am totally with you. AI, in my opinion, is overhyped. There's a lot of other cool things and important things that are happening. I'd love to get your take on quantum computing though, with regard to data security, because I'm gonna forecast this is gonna be the year 2026. We're gonna start getting a lot more, conference talks around quantum computing. Certainly it's been there, right? There's been a lot of I'll call it FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt around, hey, it's coming, make sure everything's ready. There's a lot of like, steal now, decrypt later conversations going on with regard to quantum computing. So, turning it back to you, sir, what are your thoughts around kind of the coming of quantum and what that might mean for data security implications?
So first off, I have to come clean and say, I by no means an expert on quantum computing. I actually know very little about it. I'm very excited about it, but I wouldn't be able to speak with a lot of property about it. However, the main benefit that I see for security is the ability to provide really complex encryption, really encryption that cannot be broken with keys that are super difficult to break. Quantum keys will not be um, breakable. Just won't be break. So we'll have true encryption and true protection through encryption with quantum computing to begin with. And there'll be a lot of uh, different use cases and usages for within cybersecurity for sure. Um, Enhancing AI by setting AI, it's resource intensive, so it requires the power of quantum computing to process large amounts of data. And by the way, I don't know if it's just because I'm in the field, but I see a lot of the potential for AI is in the cyber world, like in the use case that I was describing before for threat intelligence exchange, for analyzing large amounts of data. That's when AI comes handy.
Yeah, it's a lot better than an army of analysts, a bunch of spreadsheets, and a lot of screen time, right?
And not only that, I mean, is that even if you had an army of analysts, you cannot you just cannot process real time the amount of data that you have. I heard somebody says we were discussing this about the different thing, but the analogy was so 9 women cannot make a baby in 1 month. Like that's
I love that analogy. It's perfect for a lot of things we talk about. So, Arturo, you've been in the industry for over 30 years. Um, how did you get to where you are today? I mean, not only are you the director of cybersecurity architecture at Amtrak, but you're also involved in a lot of different organizations. So, what was your journey?
so. Um, I started working as a developer for ERP systems, good old JD Edwards, for people that have some gray hair will know what I'm talking about. And IBM's AS400 systems, which are rock solid, bulletproof machines.
Mid-range systems, I love it.
Yes, yes. Oh, and being there, two things happen. I guess one is by accident. I started working a lot of data architecture, and we started getting auditors come to some of our clients that I was working with, and the auditors were asking cybersecurity questions. And that was, by the way, before cybersecurity was a cool thing to do. It was just not cool at the time. This is kind of boring things that you have to go through audit and answer a few questions. But I started very interested in this. So that's one thing. On the other hand, like I said, I was as a consumer of I started feeling the aggression of data privacy and protected data privacy. I was like, this is not right. We have to do something. So those were the two drivers that got me into cybersecurity. Now, being into because a lot of my background was on the data side, relational databases and structured databases in general. It was a little different from the common path that a lot of people transition from cybersecurity, which were more from the network design and sysadmin roles that got into cybersecurity. But that was great because that gave me a lot of perspective. I started working with, I had a different view, I guess, for cybersecurity. I started working because of So I started working with a small company that had some very good data privacy protection product, and it was excellent product. It was great, but they had very little. They lacked two things, I guess. One is interaction interfaces for the AS400, which I knew pretty well, and secondly, support for clients to do the implementations because these were real nerds, people as nerdy as you can think of. And, unfortunately, and it's true, this stereotype that those of us that are nerds have very limited social skills. So customers were complaining that they couldn't, these have these great systems, but nobody taught them how to drive them or how to use them, how to implement them properly. So I started working with them. That company was so good that they were eventually bought by IBM. So I partnered with IBM, and my company partnered with IBM, and I got access to all the cybersecurity products, and that's what got me excited. So I followed the journey. I at one point I realized that not everybody liked IBM products or necessarily wanted to solve their problems with IBM products. And my passion was more about solving the problems than selling products. So that's how. So I became agnostic to technology and tried to work more on the actual cybersecurity issues and try to solve them with whatever resources we have. And so that took me to a journey of acquiring my certifications, CISSP, and so that's been my journey. I really love what I do. I like the way I had the opportunities that I've had. I'm very happy to be able to have built upon it. Right now, I'm trying to speak up, and I go to conferences and bring the message about operational technology protection for critical infrastructure. That's my message these days. But to the people that are starting in the field, always my recommendation is, follow your passion. Find where your passion is. I've been, like I said, fortunate to be able to try different things within cybersecurity. There are things that excite me a lot. There are some things that I know that I'm not good at. Don't ask me to configure a firewall because I might do it once, but I didn't do that for a daily routine. But when people are passionate about that, then they love doing. So I guess the message is find your passion, and I guess that's I think I found it, and I've been lucky to be able to follow it and be very happy where I am right now.
Yeah, you definitely brought me back as well, Arturo. So I don't tell a lot of people this, but one of my first internships, I was working with AS400s. I was working within JD Edwards. I was configuring the tape backups, right? LTO2s through LTO4s for our production and for our development systems. And it's funny because I tell some people that, like, man, that sounds boring. And truth be told, it was, right? It was very iterative, but I would not. go back and trade that experience for anything because it gave me some of that hands-on experience that some folks don't have, right? Some folks don't know what a mid-range is. They know what a mainframe is, but they don't know there's other thing.
So, and you reminded me about an anecdote that happened to me. There was one time where I developed a very secure network environment with a lot of visibility in many different places. This was probably 20 years ago or so. So I have two daughters, and I brought them to my computer center, and I showed them I was very excited about showing them the network and how that works and how I could see traffic moving from one place to another. And they looked at me and said, like, "This is so boring. Is this what you did?" No. So nobody shares your passion. Not always everybody shares your passion. I guess that's the message there.
And times have changed. I mean, again, I remember that first job I had, they as in the executives of the company would bring, suppliers, customers, whatever, to show them the data center, right? They'd walk through the data center and it was just blinky lights. Like, let's be real, there is blinky lights, but back then it was a pretty big data center, right? Data centers were a real big thing. And then I remember towards the end of that job, instead of the full room being a cold room for the data center, um, technology and updates had changed where now there's cold aisles, right? And instead of, pumping AC into the whole room, it's the aisles. So just even then, those years, it was very interesting to see technology change, hype change, and all of that.
Yeah, that's true. But I think then as you said, we're in very exciting times right now with everything that's going on with technology, cybersecurity, quantum computer, um, artificial intelligence. I mean, there's a lot going on. So I like to, if I may, encourage your audience and people that are starting in the field to just go for it. Find your passion, and then there's lots of things to do. And we need you, by the way. We need you.
Yeah, we definitely need more defenders for sure. So, on that vein, if folks want to connect with you, Arturo, maybe learn from you, follow your content, what's the best way to do so?
LinkedIn is really the best way to reach out. Um, yeah, if anybody wants to connect, I'll be happy to do that. I run the ISC2 software chapter in the software region, and that's another venue where it's my way of giving back a little bit of all the good things that I have received, and we have opportunities for learning about cybersecurity in many different aspects. We do have a lot of conversations about the different paths that people can take. We also work closely with our similar cybersecurity organizations in the area so that we exchange information. You might be aware, for instance, that ISACA is our enemy from ISC2, but we get along very well. And we have this joint events where we discuss, okay, why are you better than we are? But we also work with very serious stuff like Infragat, for instance, the IBM private sector organization that exchanges information and, and shares the tips and ideas and even support for organizations that want to or have to increase their security stance. Infragat is a great resource. I don't know if you can tell, but I really love talking about this. I'm really passionate about what I do, and I love mentoring people and helping everyone make decisions. Yeah, by all means, look me up. Yeah, let's chat.
Awesome. Well, Arturo, I really appreciate you joining for this episode today.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks a lot. Great conversation.
And big thank you to the audience. Really hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something today. Please tell others in your network to follow and listen. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centro. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte scale data protection without the fuss, please visit centro.io. Catch you next time.